We're going to call this meeting to order now. It is 7:01 p.m. on August 11th. And this is the 6th public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission Subcommittee on Research. I am Dr. Christine Moses, your facilitator, along with Victoria Laura. With the Spanish interpreters, Manuel and Luis, can please give the information in Spanish interpretation? That would be wonderful.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por estar hoy presente en esta reunión. Les vamos a dar unas instrucciones breves, rápidas de cómo poder escuchar simultáneamente en español. Y si ustedes miran abajo de su pantalla, empezamos por el lado izquierdo, van a ver icono del micrófono, van a ver una cámara. Siguen corriendo hasta encontrarse casi que a la parte del final. Van a hallar un globo o un mundo donde ustedes le van a dar clic. Abren, por favor apaguen el original, audio original tiene que estar apagado y pueden seleccionar español o inglés. Si usted quiere seguir en inglés, siempre tiene que seleccionar inglés. Asegúrese de seleccionar o inglés o español, por favor, y apague el audio original para que no tenga interferencias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so very much. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Andrea and Amanda. You can pin their video feed if that is helpful to you. Finally, the closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. But please note that this is an automatic captioning service and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to the City of Portland Administrative Code and the Oregon State Law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings and agenda topics. We like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and the answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. Next slide, please. The purpose of our land acknowledgement is to center the traditional native inhabitants of the land upon which we live. We want to respectfully acknowledge the Chinook, the Clatskanie, the Kalapuya, and the Multnomah and the Clackamas, two tribal nations who are missing from this map, who are now part of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. Because of the genocide that occurred in the creation of this country, we honor those who have stewarded this land throughout the generations, and we pay our personal respects to their elders, both past and present. Thank you. Next slide, please. I'd like us to review the 2 slides of our community agreements, and then I will ask for a thumbs up. So if we can go ahead and read these silently, that would be most helpful, and then I'll ask Victoria to move to the second slide in a moment. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. May I have thumbs up or jazz hands in agreement? Thank you very much. I will now pass it over to the co-chairs to discuss the timeline.
Okay, thank you so much. So the commission is currently in the fact-finding phase of work, and is expected to go into early September. It includes hearing from the key stakeholders, identifying barriers to accountability in Portland presently, and examining systems of accountability from other jurisdictions, and the proposals from subject matter experts. It also includes increased community engagement work. Future phases of work will develop will develop the parameters for the new police accountability system. Before the commission presents that to the City Council in 2023 for their consideration and approval. Next slide. Following today's meeting, here are the next several upcoming meetings of the PAC. This subcommittee will meet again on August 22nd. The PAC subcommittee on community engagement events will meet next Monday, August 15th. And the PAC will also meet as a full commission next Thursday, August 18th, as well as the following Thursday, August 25th. The commission will not meet over the Labor Day. Next slide. This is the current projected plan for the fact-finding phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. It's not their agenda. It's not set in stone. The slide is mostly for the members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through to the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among commission members as to barriers to accountability, and in the current system and the best practices from Portland and other jurisdictions. And also suggestions to consider from experts, as well as taking public comment and meeting with key stakeholders. So today's meeting is in the green box towards the bottom of the right of the screen with a purple border. Okay, next slide. As part of completing the fact-finding phase, the full commission will consider ideally approve 3 documents, which are listed on this page. The 2 are being developed in the subcommittee for eventual referral to the full commission, where they will be discussed again before being approved. And the 3rd, which focuses on barriers to police accountability in the current system in Portland, as well as best practices in Portland, is being developed at the full commission level throughout this phase as well. So today's meeting agenda focuses on the first 2 draft documents just mentioned, which are being developed in the subcommittee and eventually referred to the full commission for their approval. They are draft areas of agreement on best practices and practices to avoid from other jurisdictions, as well as the draft areas of agreement on suggestions to consider, as well as proposals to avoid from subject matter experts. We will hear members' research reports today, spend most of our time discussing the draft document. And during these discussions, members may also reference any other of the documents posted to the PAC website under Subcommittee on Research Resources. There will also be public comment towards the end of the agenda.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Sophia. So, yes, next slide. Okay, best practices and practices to avoid from other jurisdictions. Would love to have report outs from our commissioner members or commissioners. So we have on deck today, we have New Orleans, Washington, DC, any other updates and new research to report out from Austin, Fort Worth, Columbus, or Boise. So would love for us to be able to hear those presentations. I think 3 to 4 minutes for New Orleans, 3 to 4 minutes for Washington, DC, and we can continue the conversations.
So I will be reporting on New Orleans. I am still in my preliminary stages for that. I've got some calls I'm trying to get to talk to actually someone. I made a contact, I think it was a week ago. And the person that I was supposed to talk to is supposed to be in a conference for 2 weeks. So I'm trying to find someone else to talk to because we will be finished by then. But, you know, up until that point, I've been doing research on the website, and I will have that added to the list as we go through it. We're going to have a new document. We're going to discuss that a little later. So we will discuss that then. But I didn't have Washington, DC. So I don't know who had Washington, DC.
Jason.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Jason. Yes.
I wonder if he's here. No, doesn't look like it. Well, I will have to read his notes, but I will let someone else go and I'll pull up those notes.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Are there any other updates? Commissioner Dan.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Moses. And Dr. Moses, I'm going to sort of preface my remarks this evening by saying I didn't twinkle my fingers during the community agreements because I'm worried about some of the feelings I'm experiencing right now. So I might need your help later in the meeting
Okay.
to express myself in an appropriate manner. So I'm going to say that right up front. Okay, so I'm Dan Handelman. You see him pronouns. I'm a member of the commission. I spoke with a staff person, the interim executive director in San Diego City, which was one of the cities I reported on previously, to get some more information. They had a 23-member board. The charter that went through expanded that to 25 members to specifically include 2 youth positions. So I don't think that's something we've heard before from any other city. I wanted to mention, I posted a longer version of this to email earlier today, and I hope it's going to end up on the website when I have a chance to integrate it with my other information. One of the positions they're hoping to hire with the new budget they have is an analyst, which is, I think, something that's sort of been hinted at by other jurisdictions, but we never actually heard that term, I don't think, before in any of the meetings we had, an analyst. So that's an important thing I thought to mention. This is one of the 2 jurisdictions that I came across where the board set a quorum of a majority of seated members, which you know is something we have under discussion here for our own commission. And they were able to do that because the way the city council set them up is that they get to run their own internal rules. It's only when they interact with other agencies that they have to get city council approval to change their bylaws. So that's something else to think about in order to give this as much independence as possible to the new board, right? One of the things I mentioned as a highlight of this committee, and by the way, currently it's called the Commission on Police Practices, but it's still functioning as the Civilian Review Board because the transition created by ballot measure hasn't been finished yet because they haven't written the city code yet. That sounds a little familiar. That's what's going on here, except that our old board isn't transitioning to the new board. Our old board is supposed to be being replaced by the new board. So there's a lot of confusion, not only in my mind, but what's going on there. But anyway, they have a power to turn cases over to the district attorney, the grand jury, or another agency, essentially if they find what they think is a criminal issue with a police officer. But the Ms. Mosley who I spoke to thinks that they've never used that power in all the years they've been in existence. And that's, we've kind of heard that kind of thing before, where we see things on paper, but they never get used. So I'm not sure how to even overcome that, but it's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so then when I got to the existential question, I'm skipping a lot. The existential questions, I asked what are the barriers you face, and she said, I mentioned that I was, a member of the commission, or I was doing this research, that also I'm a member of Portland Cop Watch, and we've been doing this kind of stuff for years. She said one hindrance that she sees is the community activists, including those who put the charter amendment forward, trying to interfere with decisions that are being made. So I said, thank you, I'll take that down. I'll take note of that. I'm not quite sure, I have very strong feelings about that being stated by somebody in city government, feeling that community members shouldn't have a voice in how things move forward for a community-driven oversight system. So she gave an example that she had to reopen a job listing for the deputy executive director because the community raised concerns that the hiring process had been unfair. To me, that doesn't seem like a hindrance, but I'm just reporting what she said. Mm-hmm. Okay, so finally, in the other one of the other existential questions was, where else should we look? She mentioned Albany, New York, which is, frankly, where she was before she moved to San Diego 7 years ago. But I've never heard of anything like this before. Their oversight board is outside the city structure, and it's embedded in a law school. And after she left, they recently got new responsibilities and their own investigators at this law school civilian oversight board. So I don't know if there's any time, I hope there is time still to look into that to see if that somehow can work into the new system here. And then she also mentioned Rochester, New York, which has 30 to 40 staff people on its review board. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Dan. Any questions for Commissioner Dan? Commissioner Lavisa.
Sorry, thank you so much, Dan, for your work on this. Could you say a little bit more? I didn't catch it. What exactly is embedded into a law school?
The Civilian Review Agency in Albany, New York. So it would be as if Lewis and Clark Law School here had in it the oversight system for the Portland Police, except that it's in Albany. So they were able to go into internal affairs and sit in on the interviews, but now they're going to get their own investigators as well. So it sounds like it was more of an auditing kind of review board, but it's moving into being a more serious one, but again, not part of the police, not part of the city, part of this law school. So I'm really fascinated by that.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
Now that you mentioned that, Jason, with New Orleans, they're called Police Monitor. It's a division of the Office of Inspector General. I thought that was interesting too.
Mm-hmm. And Commissioner Sophia, where's the Office of Inspector General located?
I did not look that up. I told you I'm still working on it, but I'm thinking it's the state's Office of Inspector General. I'm just assuming that, and not the federal Office of Inspector General. Mm-hmm. But I'll have to be, like I said, I'm just doing my preliminary stuff and I haven't dug into that, but I thought that was quite interesting as well. Mm-hmm. So if we have time, I did pull up Commissioner Renault's report. I can review some of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. That would be lovely. This is Washington, D.C.
Yes. Let's see. I just had it up. Get rid of it. Sorry. 1 second. Oh, it's a PDF. That's why I was looking at the wrong document. Okay. So the OPC, they call it the Office of Police Complaints. It takes complaints from the community. The community's complaints are taken by phone, live pickup during the business hours, and voicemail after hours, and through an online form. The website, he says the website has a good video with instructions, and the staff is bilingual in Spanish. It says staff reviews every complaint. Board only reviews complaints that staff denies. I'm not sure what that is, but I think there's some distinction there between the board and the staff. People have 90 days to file a complaint. They can make exceptions to this rule, such as a person being in jail or a fear of retaliation. Some of the materials they can give online: complaint forms, paper forms, and many community are available at the community organizations, is what he's saying. Website has a considerable information on it, including a video describing the complaint process. Anyone can make a complaint. Witnesses can make a complaint. Parents of minors can make complaints on behalf of their child. Mediation is available. Complaints are received and reviewed by staff. Okay, this is where it's more detailed. If denied, the complaint is reviewed by the board. The board is the final reviewer. If accepted, case goes to administrative judge, hired on a case-by-case basis. And the AJ, I'm not sure what AJ is for, can hold additional hearings and gather information. The timeline for investigations to be complete is 180 days. And he says most are resolved most quickly. And for subpoena power, the OPC has subpoena power, but uses them rarely. OPC does not have direct access to records, but receive them by request. And they advise, and this is direct access, advise, get direct access if you don't want. You don't know what you don't know. Okay, I see what he's saying. Because you don't have direct access, you don't know what you're not getting. Some of these are redundant, so give me a second. Can the board compel officers' testimony? If so, how is it accomplished? And it says no. Testimony comes by board, by order of the MPD. It is not a problem. Request scheduling goes through the court notification system, which has access to vacation and leaves and tracks if an officer does not appear. There's different administrative findings. There's sustain, exonerate, insufficient facts, and unfounded. Criminal conduct is reported to the U.S. Attorney for investigation and prosecution. Theft is the primary misconduct charge. Discipline process goes entirely through the chief of the MPD. Appeals process, the board is the final authority. And I'm assuming that this is the police review board, but I'm not sure. This is, will city council continue to be part of the process? It says absolutely not. Policy training recommendations for both the community board and the agency staff. It seems most policy was settled for DC several years ago. It is not an area of interest at the moment. The chief may appeal a ruling reviewed by the complaint examiner. Officer cannot appeal, but must impose discipline. How many people are on the board? There's 5. They're going to expand it, I guess, to 9, soon to increase the geographical diversity. And the folks are appointed by the mayor. Quorum requirements is 3, make a meeting. Only 1 member is required to sign dismissal. It's unpaid. There's an annual report, a semi-annual report. And the decisions are posted online and the releases are online. And they don't appear to be public meetings, they're hearings. I'm gonna end that right now because I got a lot of noise in the background. So I'll let you guys go.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Thank you so much for reporting that out and for Commissioner Jason to do that legwork. That was very thoughtful and generous of him. Any other conversation we want to have around jurisdictions that had been reported out, or any other additions at the moment? So I would like us to move then to our draft documents. Now that we've heard from several members about the practices of other jurisdictions, we will be going through the draft areas of agreement on best practices and practices to avoid from other jurisdictions. Today, we will be screen sharing the draft area of agreement document on best practices and practices to avoid from other jurisdictions. For each entry into this document, we will be asking if members believe it is a good practice from another jurisdiction and support the PAC designating it as such. No decision will be made today on this document. We're only looking for support on specific bullet point, on specific bolded sentences. I apologize for the triggering word. Again, no decision is anticipated on this document today, and we may not be able to get through the entire document today, but flagging items which are effectively consensus ideas, but which might need wordsmithing, or items which need more discussion because they're not yet a consensus, will help ensure the subcommittee and eventually the PAC can complete this document and move on to the next phase of work. So that's, next slide, please. That's what we're going to be having today, is an open discussion as we follow our agreements. This is an open discussion, and to follow our normal discussion rules, please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated, and remember, we're now using a weighted stack in our discussions. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Would the chairs like to frame the discussion and get it started?
Yes, Commissioner, Commissioner Dan, did you want to say something though before I try to frame the discussion?
Yeah, if possible. The documents we received this afternoon are dated August 9, and I'm noticing today is August 11th. Did we get the most up-to-date version of those documents?
I am going to ask staff to answer that question.
Thank you. So it's a 99% yes to your question. That's, I guess, the best way to put it. There were a lot of inputs received very close to the meeting, and not all have been able to be incorporated. So instead of trying to rush it all in and potentially miss something that would be harder to go back and fix, the August 9th drafts, which were circulated earlier, were recirculated today. The only thing that you'll see that's different in here is the occasional addition of well, in the same email that went out, there was a note that a couple lines would be moved around. So instead of having it say city : and then the actual proposed area of agreement, it reverts back to how it showed before as identified in the city on the second line. That's the only difference, as you'll see. So that's the 1%. of the, when I say 99% yes. But other than that, no content changes or anything like that, just moving that down to the next line. And you'll see what I mean in just a moment when we share the screen.
Commissioner Dan, is that clear? Are you good with that answer?
Well, Dr. Moses, thank you for asking that question. The reason I asked is that I took the opportunity when we didn't have a meeting Monday and spent 4 hours entering data into a spreadsheet. And then I spent another 2.5 hours after that evening when I should have been relaxing. And I spent another 3 hours the evening after that putting things into the spreadsheet, expecting that because we had a meeting on Thursday, it would be timely to get my information in there. And I do not see a single item on this entire document that came from my research. And that's why I'm expressing myself, and again, asking for your indulgence in helping me express myself in my me statements, which I'm trying to do.
I appreciate that deeply, using I statements. So thank you so very much. Commissioner Catherine.
Yeah, I just want to say maybe before the framing discussion occurs, I am just completely lost in where we're at in terms of the documents and where I'm supposed to put my information. None of my information is in this current document. I did send some stuff to be put into the spreadsheet and understood other people were putting stuff into the spreadsheet, but I was thinking we left it, that we weren't putting stuff into the spreadsheet. So I just stopped because I wasn't quite sure where we were going. And so I will say that the information that I was responsible for gathering, I have not put in anywhere because I just I could not follow. I tried to read the emails and follow what was going on, but maybe I didn't have enough time or focus to really figure it out. But I'm pretty lost, and I'm sorry that I have not put my inputs into whatever document I'm supposed to, but I just wasn't sure what I was supposed to be doing. So if we could just maybe take a step back and before we start talking about a specific document, talking more broadly about research notes to spreadsheet to Word document and how that is flowing and what we're supposed to be doing and what we're not supposed to be doing. I really have lost my way and want to be sure that whatever I've done, I can memorialize in the way that is consistent with what we're being told to do, but I just have not been able to follow that. So if we could maybe get some clarity on that, and it may require then to schedule another meeting once we have clarity and we can all then follow those instructions and create a more complete document. That might end up, it seems to me, maybe we might be able to have a more complete discussion with everybody's inputs into the document. So thank you for indulging me, and I'm sorry if I'm the only one lost. I'm sorry, but
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right. Commissioner Catherine, thank you. I do not think you are the only one who is lost. I think there has been a great deal of work that has gone on, and that we are in a messy process. And so I am going to ask Commissioner Angie to step in, and then I'm going to go to Commissioner Debbie, because I know you've done some rewriting and some work, Commissioner Debbie, and we also need to get that information into the document too. But I want Commissioner Angie to step in, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. I appreciate it. Hopefully I can help bring some clarity. So originally we were taking notes, and we have those pages of notes that we're sharing with city staff so they can upload those raw notes to a spreadsheet, or not, I'm so sorry, not a spreadsheet, to a website so we can access those. And then I created the spreadsheet because I'm a spreadsheet person. Thank you, Commissioner Dan. You are also a spreadsheet type person. And it is my way of being able to organize things often comes in spreadsheets, in data sheets, and I was hoping to make those notes more concise and easier for us to kind of sort through this spreadsheet that just had, 5 columns in it, basically, that we could organize those notes into with specific items that we thought were important from our notes, basically. The final documentation is the Word document that we're talking about. And that's what so right now I'm kind of framing all of this in the same way that we had the bylaws framed, in that it was big. Putting the bylaws together was big and complicated, and we had to kind of break it out into pieces, and we had to work through it, and we had a lot longer time to do the bylaws, and I feel like we actually started with a more organized structure with the bylaws because we knew what we were going for. With this is a lot of information, and the final documentation is this Word document that are the areas of agreement. So that information is what we're going to be sharing with the rest of the commission and asking for approval, but we are not there yet, obviously. So right now, I think that, I know that staff was feverishly transferring information from our spreadsheet into the actual documentation, the Word document. And, there is a lot of information that we have so far, thank goodness. I mean, this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be getting as much research information as possible, but we do need to move forward and try to create this document so we can share it with the rest of the commission and move forward. So if Sophia or anybody else has any supplemental information related to what I'm saying, if you could jump in there. And I'm sorry to take up so much time. Thank you.
And Commissioner Angie, this is so helpful, right? Thank you for giving us the structure of how things have happened. So my question is, where should Commissioner Catherine put her information that is not there yet? Where is the best place for Commissioner Catherine to put her information? Is it in notes page on the website? Is it send it to staff?
Have staff's input because they are the ones that are doing the heavy lifting with transferring. And I love data. I love spreadsheets, and I will tell everybody to put something into a spreadsheet, but I'm not sure if that's the right answer right now because they are spending hours transferring this data, and I don't know if they want us to put it straight into the areas of agreement right now. So I need to ask staff about that.
Can I, sorry.
I'll defer to co-chair Sophia.
So I wanted to just add a little bit more, saying that yes, there was no structure here. So we were kind of just, everyone was gathering information. And the spreadsheet was, as she said, the way to try and culminate that in a way. But this document that we're talking about now, like the staff was taking, like literally taking some of that information and putting it into this document that we have from the spreadsheet. And some of that was not complete sentences or whatever. So there's some smithing that they've done with that. And also there's categories that they try to put all of that documentation in. I'm assuming partially from the categories that were in the spreadsheet, but also in some of the notes, they had split things off in your notes that had a different category. So we ended up coming up with, I don't know, like 26 categories of all the things that were put into the spreadsheets. Now, I don't know about Dan. I know you said your stuff wasn't there, and I can't speak for that because I didn't do it, but I know that it is being worked on, and maybe that didn't get, for whatever reason, that one didn't get in there. But this is the thing. The document that we have at the end result is the document we're supposed to provide to city council members for them to approve. And that document has to say something a little bit different than all the details that we've been given, we've taken. So we'll be using that information, but the city council wants to know why we chose these people. What was, so we have to answer some specific questions with them. And this is the document that we're trying to gather right now and come up with some agreement on. Not to have every single research item that we found, but to try and culminate that into a document, the staff, that the city commissioners can look at and say, what did you do? This is the research this is the places we researched. This is why we researched them. These were the highlights of those practices, or the highlights of those jurisdictions, or those are the highlights. And these are the things that we want to focus on. It is not all encompassing of what we will do or what we have done research on, but it's we have to put it in a format that the city council can look at and approve. So that may help a little bit when you start seeing that some of your stuff is not there. And that's because I'm not sure exactly why, if it's not there, but I'm just saying some of the things like this, the document we have is like 20 pages so far, and that's not including Catherine's information and my information. So it could even be, it's going to be even longer. What we're trying to do is we're trying to find some agreement on the things that we do have and say, you know, for whatever jurisdiction it is do we find this is the most important thing, one of the more important things, and this is what we want us to present to the full commission and to the city commissioners. Does that make sense? Does that help? I'll let staff comment as well.
Yeah, just two quick clarifications. First, appreciate the shout for the time, but I do want to note that it's time consuming but not heavy lifting to transfer things in. The research done by the members is the heavy lifting, and I want to make sure that the focus remains on you and all the work that you've been doing on this level of research, and also the analysis of it to put it into categories and eventually start saying whether you believe individually and eventually as a group if it's a good practice or practice to avoid, for example. Second clarification is that Co-Chair Sophia referred to smithing being done. That has not happened yet. There's been no smithing by staff, just a slight reformatting. I just want to be very clear about that. Just to make sure there's no misunderstanding as to the current status of the document. And then the third point, and we'll talk about this a little bit maybe when showing the document, is to try and with co-chairs develop sort of a model entry for what needs to be included to say that this is a comprehensive area of agreement with a sufficient level of explanation. And I'll let the co-chairs talk about that when we do the share screen, but to be able to create that structure, because there wasn't much before, co-chairs this week talked about, you know, moving it into the document phase so that there could be, you know, something to react to. I think that's been a comment that's come up several times, that it's helpful sometimes to have something to react to. I think Commissioner Debbie has mentioned that in other contexts, for example, and I think that's a very valid request. So trying to create something that people can look at and see this is where the end goal is. And then separately, having the subcommittee on research resources page on the website where every document that's being sent in is being uploaded. So the research notes, which are very helpful if you want to learn about a given jurisdiction or a given subject matter expert, as well as the spreadsheets, which is a good place to put basically, here's all the research we did, and then eventually distilling that down to you as members, distilling that down to what you agree is a good practice, what you agree is a practice to avoid, and eventually referring that to the full commission for their eventual approval. So that doesn't answer the next steps. I know that Sophia answered that, and so did co-chair Angie. So I won't change anything there. I just wanted to give that kind of clarity as to why it may be helpful to impose, not impose, to create a structure and show like a model entry of what the end goal of this process is supposed to look like from the co-chair's perspective.
Thank you for that. I still do have a question on where should Catherine send her information?
So in an email, I'll try to directly answer that. In an email, we said that it would be helpful to put things directly into the document. Having said that, as we saw with Commissioner Dan, was already in process working in the spreadsheet. And I think it's fair to say that Commissioner Dan may not be the only person who is in process on the spreadsheet. So maybe we'll say, if it's okay with the co-chairs, that it might be helpful to take one more round of input via spreadsheet. And then staff can transfer that over to the document, and then perhaps early next week shift to reacting to the document and putting things in there. Unless you want to add it for references, you can create reference notes and we'll still upload it. But in terms of just where the input should go, if it's okay with the co-chairs, staff's able to accommodate that very easily.
So,
So
chairs.
So just let me be clear. I thought out of last week's meeting, we were not supposed to work on the interactive spreadsheet. So I didn't. But if that's what we're supposed to do, I'm happy to do that. I just was really lost. And then when I saw other people doing that, that's where I think I got very confused. I just decided, instead of doing something wrong or inputting in the wrong document, I would just wait to get a little bit more clarity. I'm happy. I mean, whatever is easiest, if it's easier for us to redline the Word document, happy to do that. Easier to input into the spreadsheet, happy to do that. I just want to do what is, at this point, especially since we're running out of time, whatever is the most, I think at this point, a lot of it would be to sort of Me Too stuff, where we have categories, add in, okay, the jurisdictions I researched too, where they have those elements, it's sort of building on what is already there. So if it is easiest to just add it into the Word document in Redline, can do that. So that's really the discussion I was hoping to have, because that's where I was getting a little bit lost.
Co-chair?
So my thought is this, Catherine, I would say put it into the document, but as we go through the document, if you start finding it confusing, like, as we're going to go through what we're looking for as far as the format is, if we go through that and you find that it's something that's more difficult, then we can go back and do it in the spreadsheet. But I will say there's no problem putting it in the spreadsheet, but I don't want anyone to be wasting any time putting it in there. If you've already put it in the spreadsheet, staff will go in and transfer that information. The other thought, at some later date, because of time, if you wanted to put that into the spreadsheet, it would be a good idea, but it doesn't have to be, is where I'm going with that. How about you, Commissioner Tomlinson?
Yeah, yes, I concur with that. That I think that, unless, as long as that's okay with staff, but I think that putting it into the spreadsheet and then, or I'm sorry, putting it into the document and unless you've already taken the time to put it into the spreadsheet. Thank you.
We're good with whatever you decide from a staff perspective. If co-chairs, whatever co-chairs say in this conversation, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, but we just have to have a stop time for the putting input into the spreadsheet.
Right. I was going to ask the co-chairs, when is pencils down?
I would say pencils is down after this meeting. If you have something that you've put in already, that's great. If you still have something you want to put in, I would say pencils down tomorrow. That way staff can have something to work from, because we have another meeting coming up. And we want to have that into the next document for everyone to review. How's that sound, Commissioner Thomason? Okay.
I see a thumbs up for that. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, pencils down tomorrow. Commissioner Debbie, thank you. I'm going to go to staff.
Feel free to let Samir go first.
Okay,
Yeah, no
okay.
problem.
Thank you.
So just to clarify one other thing, if you have submitted something to the spreadsheet, you'd like to adapt it as well to make it into a complete sentence or something like that, that would also be on the same timeline, just to clarify that. And I'm guessing that our Spanish language interpreters are going to ask us to speak a little bit slower. So I'm guessing that's what that is, but I'll defer there. But yeah, if anyone would like to update their entry to make it a little bit clearer for when it is converted over, and it's not yet in the Word document already, please feel free to adjust your spreadsheet entry by the deadline the co-chairs just set for the spreadsheet. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Catherine, thank you for Commissioner Catherine, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for bringing it up. Okay, Commissioner Debbie.
So first thing I think it'd be good if we talked about more is the value of the spreadsheet versus this Word document. You know, we probably got a little hint of complaining from me in my emails about putting stuff in the spreadsheet, but I have to say that the way the information is organized in that, I think is going to be so much really useful to us when we're trying to think about what types of provisions do we want to put in our code. So kind of what version of these different things work the best for us. Sorry, here comes my clock. So I hope that we can have a spreadsheet that has everything in it. And if we have to do that other thing, that's fine. But I would like to really have a spreadsheet that captures everything that we found. So that's just my personal comment on that. Then the thing that I'm still having a hard time understanding all this. Okay, so now we're to the point where we know that how to submit our information, and it's going to be in this Word document, unless we decide otherwise. And then is this subcommittee going to take that Word document that's 20 pages now and is going to get way longer by the time, especially by the time Commissioner Handelman's stuff gets added to it? And then are we going to look at that and decide what we agree on? Or do we send all of that to the full commission and then they look at it all and we decide as a large group what we agree on? And then how do we incorporate the public's input into deciding what we agree on? So I'd like to understand that, the rest of the story. That would help me to get a big picture of what it is we're doing. Thank you.
I'm going to entertain those questions. Co-chairs.
And we might need to, I know poor Lavisa is here. I know, because beyond our research committee, it's a little hard for me to say exactly what the full commission is doing throughout this entire, this section of this process. You know, this, I'm sorry, we have the different pieces, and during this research phase, I'm not totally sure we are going to be able to integrate with the public outreach committee. So if Sophia has something much more eloquent to say than me, please do.
I don't think it's eloquent, but I'm trying to get back to the original question. So I'm going to tag on to that one. I have not actually coordinated with the community engagement, but I was on the call with them, and that kind of discussion had already come up. How are we going to integrate the public into what we've come up with? Or are we going to do something separate from, are they going to do something separate from the public from their sessions? You know, they may have a different view. That was what was coming up. So I'll let Lavisa, since she was on the whole call, I will let Commissioner Lavisa talk to that. But it has been discussed a little bit.
Excuse me. And from what I understand, it's a separate document. That subcommittee is making a separate document, and that's where the community's viewpoints get illuminated.
There's gonna be three different
documents.
documents. One
Yes.
from the subcommittee on research, one from the full commission,
Right.
and there's gonna be another one from community engagement. Now, like I said, we're doing our own thing, and I don't know the details of how that's gonna culminate, but I do understand that the information that we've gathered will definitely be presented to the community engagement as they have their meetings and have some input into it. So I just don't know how.
Well, and I'm being corrected because there is no document from the other subcommittee. There is no document coming from them in particular, because remember, it's proposals from experts, practices from other jurisdictions, and then the full commission does the barriers and best practices in the current system of PDX. So those are the three documents that we're trying to create.
I mistaken two of ours for one of theirs.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking so we can keep moving to the next questions.
Yeah. Commissioner Dan and then Commissioner Debbie.
Thank you. So I have 2 points. One is, in terms of the serial deliberations issue that Commissioner McDowell was concerned about, that the city attorney warned us about, I don't really understand how a spreadsheet like this, where all we're doing is entering data into it, could be considered serial conversation. But just to be careful, what I did was I took the spreadsheet, I took the categories, I eliminated everybody else's input and just put my own input into the spreadsheet, so that way there would be no accusation of that. But I kept the categories in the same order to try to make it easier for staff to follow, so they can integrate my information. I agree with Commissioner Tomlinson, Co-Chair Tomlinson. I think the spreadsheet is a much easier way to find the information, retrieve the information, and perhaps eventually create a document from. But I think it's very premature for us to be reviewing a document tonight that admittedly doesn't have anything from me. Some of the stuff from Commissioner Iona, the stuff that Commissioner Glenn hasn't finished researching. So I'm not sure I understand why we're even looking at that document when we got through about 40 lines of 70 lines that were in the spreadsheet last time. And maybe it's worth us, not going over every point like we did last time, but just sort of broadly looking at the things that we have, so that we can inform the document. And my second point is that having pencils down on this tomorrow is very constraining from my point of view. I feel like learning that tonight, I would have had to set up my schedule for tomorrow to put time in to do whatever I need to do to finish that up. And also knowing there's several cities that are listed still on our agenda and that other people are looking into that haven't been looked at. I'm hoping that we can look at Monday or Tuesday next week, perhaps as a more realistic timeline, so that we're not scrambling in less than 24 hours to try to get everything put together. Thank you.
So I'd like to comment about the pencils down. The pencils down was not for you to stop working. It was for you to stop putting it into the spreadsheet. Doesn't mean that and I agree, I like the spreadsheet. So I'm agreeing with Commissioner Iona and Thomason. I do like the fact that the information will be in there. What we're up against time right now. And that's the issue. And I know research, I know, a dissertation and a thesis, you're never done. You're never done. Let me just tell you, it's a very hard thing to stop doing, but you want to graduate. That's what they tell us. Like, you can't just research everything because your goal is to graduate, right? So we're trying to graduate here. So doesn't mean that you can't keep doing things. It just means that there's going to be a point right now where we have to put this document together. And as you said, Commissioner Handelman, to review. That's what we're planning on doing. Reviewing the document, just kind of looking over what we have, deciding on, how many categories we have with what we have already. How do we want to organize this document? And so we can just, as we go through this and you continue to do your research, we can just have input into this document directly. And we need to come to some kind of agreement on it because we don't have a whole lot of time. And so we're not saying stop doing your research. Even after this is over and the document is complete, we're not saying that you need to stop doing research. We're saying that this document has to be presented for the full commission and the city commission for approval. So it's just, there's got to be a stopping point. But as I've even done my research, I went down the rabbit hole to other jurisdictions when they've mentioned things like in Detroit, Michigan. There's there's a lot of stuff out there, man. And I just have to, rein it in and stop going down the rabbit hole because you'll never come out. It's like, bird dog. As long as that bird flies, that dog ain't coming home. You just gonna keep going. And we gotta go home. Then you have a lost bird dog. That's what happens when, I don't know if you guys do hunting, but there's a lot of lost bird dogs in the hunting season. All over the highway, strays everywhere. We don't want to be strays everywhere, lost the scent, can't find our way back home because we went down too far. So I want to try and calm the feeling of incompleteness. It's not going to go away. I'm just trying to let you know that that feeling is not going to go away. We're always going to feel like we have more to do. I just want us to get to a point where we can look at this document and say, is this the format we kind of want to do it in? These are the kind of things we're looking for. We just need something right now so that we can get on board next week to actually coming to some kind of consensus on what this document is going to have in it. So I'm going to stop there. And I'll
deeply appreciate the overarching view of this. So helpful for that. Commissioner Debbie.
So there may not be an answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. So this document that this subcommittee is responsible for creating, that includes policies that we think are best practices and why, and sort of the justification of why we think they are. So I looked at 3 different jurisdictions and there's, say, 3 different ways of doing a certain thing. And all of them seem like they'd be good to me, but they're all a little bit different. So are we going to include in this document that we're working on, are we going to list them all so that as we move forward to the full commission and the public, they see these different options and are able to go, whoa, I think this one's the best one for Portland and we should do something along these lines here in our city? Or is this little group that we're in right now going to be the ones that weed out some extras and pick a winner out of the different options? So I'm curious if anybody has an answer to that.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead.
Okay, sorry.
When we get to the document, we have discussed that, trying to find ways to do that. So
I'll ask again later. How about that?
We have thought about that too. There's the redundancy, we called it.
All right.
We took a couple hours the other day trying to figure out how to do that. So I'll let staff comment and then we'll go to the document, okay? If there's no more questions.
Thank you, staff.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify sort of, ideally, if there's a draft document that's going to be discussed, the subcommittee has another meeting on August 22nd. And so in the event that there were to be a document discussed on that date, the pattern of the commission so far has been to send out the document and ask for track changes so that those track changes can all be included into a single document and that document recirculated in advance of the meeting. So it kind of takes a few days. You have to kind of build a calendar backwards, that ideally we're sending the document with track changes consolidated 2-3 days at least prior to the August 22nd meeting. Then you go back from that, members would need X number of days to submit track changes to a document, which means a otherwise comprehensive draft has to be circulated X number of days before that. And so you kind of go backwards as well as forward from today and see what's possible in this 11-day window. And so I think with relation to co-chairs suggesting a sort of pencils down day, I wanted to make 2 clarifications. That would be just for this inclusion in the next version you see. Anything received after that will still get incorporated eventually. It just may not be in the next version you see. And the second thing is, from a staff perspective, if the goal is to achieve the recirculation of an updated version of the documents that Commissioner Dan accurately described as August 9th versions, that it would be totally fine on our end, if it's okay with the co-chairs, for that soft deadline to be pushed back from Friday to as late as Sunday, because realistically, we're going to next spend time incorporating that on Monday. So it's totally fine to give the weekend. And again, that would be a soft deadline. If that works for, okay.
Yours? I saw jazz hands from Angie.
Okay. So if there's no more questions. Is it okay for us as a group to look at it's just a draft, kind of call it a skeleton document?
Commissioner Sophia, can we take a 5-minute break?
Oh, sorry.
A break until 8:15, is that okay?
That's great.
All right, let's do that. We'll come back at 8:15 and then we will take a look at that document. Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome back. I would like us to take a look at this document and to remember, we're trying to see when staff shares the document, is this the right information? Is this the right information that we want to convey in this document? So I welcome staff to share it. And this is our ideal. So please take a look. Yeah, oh, this is so helpful. Thank you for enlarging. And if you can, yeah, go down to our green one. So what we would want to do today is to focus on the bold statements. Yes, where it is highlighted. Oversight body conducts public review of police department budget. Is that something that we would want in this document? It's high level, it is concise, and that's what we're trying to get to in this document, is being able to have the bold, then see where it's referenced in the spreadsheet, see where it came from, and then 1 or 2 sentences of an explanation. This is our ideal information. And I want staff to continue to clarify.
Yeah, just 2 quick points. One, there's a yellow highlighted line here, which is a spreadsheet reference. Commissioner Dan requested this, and we didn't have the time to actually implement it, but at least as an interim step to show how it would go for now, so that members of the subcommittee and eventually the full commission, if you so choose, could be able to see this line and reference it. It wouldn't necessarily be in the published version, But certainly something that you could use as you're working through this. And if it ends up referencing multiple lines because you're synthesizing two ideas together, for example, then that could easily say two different lines there, just the same way as the identified in Oakland could say if another city has the same thing. And then the second clarification is the 2 to 3 sentences below don't have to be 2 to 3. If it's a practice you're seeing in 12 cities, there's no reason that it wouldn't be longer. To help explain that, or if it's just in need of it, in your opinion. But certainly defer to Dr. Moses on and the co-chairs who kind of set this up as as a sort of model entry, and to Dr. Moses in asking for today about focusing on the bolded part. Thank you.
So I'd like us to have a brief discussion about this. And yes, we are moving from the spreadsheet into a document that can be seen by the subcommittee and then passed on to the full commission for their review. So I'm asking for input. And the document went away. And it's back. Thank you. Thoughts about this? Commissioner Sophia.
Yes, I was gonna address Commissioner Iona's idea of multiple, say there's this Oakland, and if there was another jurisdiction, those all can be listed in the identification. And then if there was something slightly different, it could be a note somewhere at the end. You know, whatever city they have this particular slight difference. Does that help answer your question about how we would deal with that?
Commissioner Debbie?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it seems fine to me. I just want to make a comment. I'm glad you're going to put the reference to the spreadsheet, because I think, again, that if you look at the spreadsheet and everything's you know, going to be bunched together based on the category, and then you could just sort of scan down that middle column and you'll see all the different policies that that we came across during our research. And again, you can kind of, you know, think, oh, would any of these approaches be good for us, or have we combined two? So I really like the idea, and I hope it carries through and it's just not just a temporary addition to the thing. So yeah.
To be determined. Thank you, Commissioner Debbie. Commissioner Dan.
So I'm going to start by saying I am not a big fan of Microsoft anything, and I don't really know how to use Word very well. But I know that you can add tables to it. So we could have something that looks a little bit more like a spreadsheet if it's a Word document. If like each subsection, like the budget subsection, has a block around it, and then like the header that says the oversight body conducts public review has a box around it. The spreadsheet reference has a box around it. Where it came from has a box around it, and the explanation has a box around it. And that, to me, that would be much more readable of a document, because right now it just looks like a big dump of words. And I think having those boxes is formatting. And if you want to do it live, then now I was just suggesting it, but it's just, I think that would help a lot if you're able to do that live. I admire your skills. I got a note from the Spanish translator. I'm the one who's guilty of talking too fast, and I think I always do that. I apologize to you and anybody who's trying to listen. And if it's also affecting the ASL interpreters, I'm sorry. I just talk fast. It's me. Judge Simon has admonished me many times for this. But here's the thing. I understand a little bit now that we're looking at the format of this. We're not necessarily agreeing on the points, which makes me feel a
Correct.
little bit that the points aren't all in there. So how can we decide on the points when they're not all in there? Broader point, I am not sure. I mean, I heard the timeline described that the research phase is going to end sometime in September. I'm not sure why we have to try to get everything done in this big of a hurry. The information we're taking from this phase is going to go into the next phases, which will then benefit from what we're doing now by narrowing things down. And so we can kind of move through those phases faster. And I'm really hoping that we're not rushing ourselves through this decision-making process, which will then hurt us down the line. And my final point is that the spreadsheet that I uploaded, which I'll upload into the chat too for the audience to look at. I'm just realizing I have this set to panelists right now. Has a series of other categories that aren't in the Word document yet, but I'm putting them in the chat. I'm going to read them out loud. The categories that are missing that I found information about are findings, time frame for investigating complaints, appeal process, city council involvement, board compensation, meeting content other than hearings, committee work / internal structure, location of office, chief / commissioner required to implement or respond, and standard of review. And these are all things that we came across in various places, but they just weren't in the original data. So that's my list, and I'll upload my spreadsheet. And again, staff may be able to answer this, but my spreadsheet is currently online, listed as research subcommittee notes 08, 09, 22, and it's only my spreadsheet. The other data aren't on that document. So I don't know if the other spreadsheet is still up there somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for putting that into chat. That was very helpful. Commissioner Sophia.
Yes, just to make a comment on a couple of Commissioner Handelman's statements is the categories. I'm going to go backwards. The categories, that's something else we're going to look at. Nothing's been set in stone for those categories as of yet. We're just trying right now to come up with the format and the categories. Right now, I think it was listed like 26, which is a lot. So we'll have to find some way to make those more concise, because just as you mentioned, the format for the cells, for the spreadsheet, it just makes it easier for someone to read, to follow. So that's another thing we'll have to figure out how to consolidate as a group. The other thing is, I know you're worried about the time and that we may be rushing things, and I won't say that we are, but we do have time limitations. Those are very uncomfortable, to say the least. But, it is not final. I just will let you know that nothing that we do here is final. It is a working document. We will continue to work on these as a commission and revisit them as commission sees fit. So don't feel like this is the end. That's all I'm saying. So that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. So I'm wondering, do you want to go back into this document to look at the different areas that are here? Is that the next step? And we also, I guess I'm asking to get consensus on this is how we want to report out, like this draft green block of words that we saw. This works for us. So I'm going to ask that question first. Does this type of reporting out, this draft block of text work for this subcommittee? Commissioner Lavisa.
Sure, I just wanted to say, you know, looking at the document, I think I kind of agree with Dan. Well, I will say just for myself, I like these general categories, sort of each item kind of having like the top level statement, or you know, a reference to a spreadsheet, or where you can find it in an appendix document, the jurisdiction that it comes from, and then like some explanation text. I think it is maybe just a little bit difficult to understand sort of what the relationship between these four pieces of information is right now. And yeah, I don't know that I have like um, a great suggestion. I do think maybe something like Dan's suggestion of like finding a way to put things into a little bit of a chart or a table or something to sort of show the relationship between like those particular items. Because I guess, I mean, we'll have a bunch of these, you know, and I'm not sure if are they areas of agreement? Like, you know, I don't know. Are they sort of like areas of interest, maybe like suggestions, you know? But
Well, these, if they're in the document, and this is the document around areas of practice from other jurisdictions that we agree are good, then that would be up at the top, I would guess. But that's there would be an explanation of what we're looking at in order to be able to make sense of the things that you're recommending in the document. Is that helpful?
yeah, that's helpful.
Okay, Commissioner Catherine and then Commissioner Debbie.
Is there, I guess I just keep hearing people kind of longing for the spreadsheet, or for turning this more into like a spreadsheet. Is there a reason why we can't use the spreadsheet and why we have to create this Word document? Is there, I just want to ask that. I'm comfortable with all kinds of documents, but I'm just wondering is that an option here? Could we just stick with our spreadsheet document and continue to refine and organize that instead of creating an additional document? It seems like that's what people are finding to be the most comfortable and helpful way to present our data. So could we consider that? It would save time, because then we would not be trying to create an additional document. We would just be continuing to refine an existing one.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. I'm going to go to staff to answer that particular question.
It's not an answer at all, just a clarification. My understanding, and this may not be the sense of the group that I got earlier might not be accurate, but what I took away from earlier in this meeting was that it might be helpful to have the raw data go into the spreadsheet, which would include identified practices, but that the document has one key distinction, which is that it has what are identified as best or practices to avoid. That sense of the commission's position on each practice, or exclusion if it's something that just is a practice that isn't necessarily something you have a strong opinion on as a group, would be a very key distinction between these two documents, and a reason why the spreadsheet would exist as a reference. But I could defer to the co-chairs on that.
Commissioner Sophia.
I'm going to say again that I do believe that spreadsheet is a good idea, but this is a report, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have maybe some kind of table maybe included in that to for a quick review of information, but it has to be a report similar to what we saw with the best practices from the current board. They had a list of things that they found were best practices and things to avoid and issues. And that's basically what this document is. But for our work, as I suggested and others have, that we believe that the spreadsheet is a good way to reference that quickly. So there's nothing wrong, Commissioner McDowell, with doing a spreadsheet. It's just that we have to have a report. And this is what we're trying to do right now, is to figure out a format for the report. And I'm still suggesting, and a lot of the others are suggesting that we keep the format for the spreadsheet as a reference. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Debbie, then Commissioner Lavisa.
So I was gonna say exactly what Commissioner Catherine said. I feel like we're talking about how to kind of make this more like a spreadsheet. And I think, well, we already have a spreadsheet. And again, with the spreadsheet, I like the idea that you can look down the middle and just see all the practices. And so it's so much easier to compare them and to paging through this Word document. The other thing is, since it's supposed to be a report, you think we could turn in the spreadsheet with a couple of pages on top that are, we describe what the research subcommittee was charged with doing, what it did, what the spreadsheet represents, and how it lists all of the best practices and options that we found in all of the jurisdictions that we looked at, and that these will be used. We'll consider these as we're designing the code in a way that's consistent with what was in the ballot measure. So I think you can, if you staple a couple pieces of paper on top, you can make it a report. So again, my little plug for the spreadsheet.
I understand displaying information is really critical, right? How information gets displayed, and reminding us that your analysis of what ends up in the report is really critical, because you as a subcommittee have decided that these are things that we want to move forward in Portland. And so there's some level of analysis, and not just having a spreadsheet with 1,000 things, but that you have made decisions at each of those levels in order to be able to bring that forward to the next level, to the commission. Debbie, Commissioner Debbie.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Okay. Yeah. So that's what again, we talked about this earlier. I'm still not quite clear about whether it's our subcommittee's role to be picking the winners out of all of these different options, or if we're presenting all of this information to the full commission and sharing it in some form with the public to get, their input and their response, rather than just leaving it to our group to come up with the favorites.
I'm going to turn that question over to Commissioner Sophia.
I think I'm trying to find the words, and I'm understanding your feelings totally. But what we're supposed to give the city commission at the end of the day is a report that they can as our recommendation, and as the subcommittee on research, we have to present something to the full commission. We can't just give them everything, because you're asking them to go through all of our research and pick. I don't even know if you're asking them to pick through it, or you're asking them to just accept all of it. It has to be in a format for the other person. So right now we have to look from the other side, not as the researchers, but the person who's getting this report. And what does that mean? And what are we giving them? If we give them a spreadsheet, I mean, I'm just going to tell you right off, if you just give me a spreadsheet full of stuff, you're not going to find, most people are not going to read it. And if they do read it, they're going to be confused. So they really need a summary, and we need to have recommendations. And I know it's hard, but it's the same with our other subcommittees. There were recommendations from each subcommittee. They were submitted to the full commission for review. And you can't send everything to the full commission for review, because it's not going to get reviewed. That's one thing. And the second thing is, you can't submit everything for the city commission, because they don't want it all. They want to know what we recommend as best practices as we see it. And that doesn't mean that's the end all. It just means that that's what we see so far. And that could change. And I think everyone understands that as we continue our work, we will be able to go through more. So I just want to get us focused again, because we have to make a recommendation and we have to have it in the form of a report. And we need to figure out as a group how to do that. And that's why we're trying to get through this document, just to have some kind of format. And I know it's uncomfortable. I'm not going to disagree with you about how uncomfortable it is to do that, but that's what we have to do. That's our charge right now. So I'm going to ask everyone if we could think about it from the other side. If you were to get this, what would you want to see? If somebody who voted on this charter, what will we tell them? Will we give them the spreadsheet and just say, just figure it out? What do we want them to know? So that's what this document is basically doing. We're trying to take what we have done, take it into a bite-sized, a form and a fashion that could be usable for someone else that is not all in the weeds like we are.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Lavisa, you had your hand up for a bit.
Well, both Debbie and Sophia kind of touched on things I was thinking about, which were that the spreadsheet is great. It is reflective of our work, and you know, it's deep, it's rich, it's like really useful, and also it probably will not be of interest to anybody except for like people who are very, very, very specifically interested in the work of this commission, right? And I do think there is a bit of an argument to be made for, you know, thinking about like when we are presenting a package, or you know, I'm sort of assuming that it's going to look like, you know, a binder or a printed folder or something of information that we give to council members that are looking at this. You know, I'm like thinking about what are the things that people will sort of like flip past, and like what are the things that they'll be looking for. And I think Sophia does make a good point of trying to figure out like what are your top level, above the line, you know, what are the headlines that somebody who has not done the deep work that we've done, what are they going to be most interested in hearing? So I agree, like consider the audience, and consider if you were the council member who was looking at this, what would you want to see?
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. We're going to, after you, go ahead and take public comment. So we're getting close to that. Oh, wait, okay, go ahead, Commissioner Dan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I don't know if I can share my screen. I uploaded a document here, and yeah, I can't even find it on my thing. Oh, there it is. So is that working for people? Can you see that? So this is terrible. This is not how I think the document should look. This is what I was trying to get at, that you could have a box that says the header, then you have a box that says proposed good practice, then list of good practice over here, the justification, list the justification over here. And I think that way it's a lot easier to read, and I think it's kind of what Commissioner Lloyd was talking about, that you know, it gives you a better idea what the text is all about. So I don't know if that can be done. It's just, that's my suggestion. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I think the thing that's troubling me is that we're writing a document to present to the rest of the commission, and then the commission is going to spend the next better part of a year taking that and turning it into the kind of documents being described that has to go to city council. So we can write any kind of document we want right now, you know, whatever we want it to look like, as long as we have the areas of agreement. And then we can format it for city council later. I don't think that should be our key concern right now, what the document looks like. Although I'd like it to look like what I just proposed. I really feel like it's the substance that's important, and I just gonna, kind of reiterate that if I understand that what we're doing now isn't written in stone, but if we don't have a complete picture to present to the commission, then the next phase is going to suffer for it, and so forth down the line. So I really hope that the co-chairs, Commissioner Boyd, will consider looking at the timeline, especially since, as I pointed out a few times, there haven't been any community engagement events yet. We've done a lot of research. So even if we just wrap up the research that we're already started and give ourselves a couple more weeks to get this document put together, I think that would be worthwhile, because I know I'm getting stressed out by all this. I could have used those extra hours of sleep instead of doing the spreadsheet. And I just want to feel like we have a more realistic picture of how we're going to get through all these categories and present something to the rest of the commission. That's my plea for the evening.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Dan. And again, thank you for all of your hard work on this and for bringing your expertise forward. Really, really appreciate it. I would like us to move on into the next part of our agenda, which is looking at member research reports on experts. Are there any experts that need to be reported out on? Research updates for like the Center for Policing Equity or Oregon Secretary of State or anything like that. That's slide 16. Commissioner Dan.
So I have a question. I'm understanding and trying to respect the idea that we've been getting our presentations and talking about the current review board in the main PAC meetings. But it also seems to me like some of my commentary in the justification section is based on what happens here in Portland, because that's the framework I have. And I think that helps understand why something is or isn't a good practice, is looking at what we have going on here. And I'm hoping that we're not limiting ourselves by only looking at Portland in the main commission meeting. And I'm saying that because I haven't been able to get in hold of Eileen Luna Fireball, who goes by a different name now. I said it, but she did a report about our system, our current system in 2008, and many of the things she identified as problematic are still existing. And I think what I'd like to do is put into that spreadsheet of experts some of the things Eileen Luna Fireball said that are problems with our current system right now. But if that's better for me to bring up in a general meeting, then let's do that. But it just feels like we have her input about our system already, and that seems like a good place for me to bring that in.
I think that's a question for the co-chairs to answer. Commissioner Sophia and Commissioner Lavisa.
I'll let Larissa go.
Okay.
I hear you, Dan. Well, I actually think it's kind of funny. I think actually either could be appropriate. It is a shame that you're not able to reach her, because she would be a very interesting person to hear from. But in terms of having reports back about experts, like this is the dedicated space for that.
A yes or a no?
Oh, that's a yes. Yes, I think now is the appropriate time. Maybe I should say this is the appropriate place.
So if that's your question, then I agree. This is the appropriate place to bring it up. We just haven't, as a commission, discussed that yet, as a subcommittee. Is there something else that I missed that you asked?
Yep, that's great. Thank you for that guidance. So, I think that will be part of our next meeting on the 22nd. And I'm wanting to really go to public comment now. And so I am going to go ahead and invite public comment in. We will now take public comment on the issues the subcommittee is discussing, or community members can also tell their story about policing and police accountability. We will ask members of the public to keep their comments or questions to 2 minutes in length and raise their hand in Zoom if you would like to speak. I want to bring forward and ask Jared Hager if he would like to bring his Q&A into public comment. Or if there are any other people who would like to make public comment. Jared.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Moses. In the Q&A, my question was about the form of your work product. And I thought it might make sense to do both and formulate your recommendation in the form of like, here's what we found are best practices and practices to avoid, and then simply attach the spreadsheet that collects your research so that anyone could then look for themselves and see if they agree with your findings. That was the question I had. A couple other things struck me as I heard the follow-on conversation, but I will save that for public comment after other people have a chance to speak.
Thank you so much. Any other people who want to provide public comment? Yes, Jared.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. A couple of things that struck me, I know your report is going to City Council for their consideration as the full commission. Ultimately, the work product that they vote on is going to be presented to the Department of Justice for our review and approval and incorporation into the settlement agreement between the United States and the City of Portland. We, in essence, have adopted the commission's, or I guess the ballot measure as our remedy for accountability failures that we've seen over the last few years. And in that regard, I really would encourage this committee and the commission to put substance over form, which I believe several folks have mentioned. And also, if this research committee is focused on, what is a best practice and what practice ought to be avoided, I think it does make eminent sense to look at the City of Portland and its current structure so that you can see where pitfalls are that need to be changed. I believe not only in my role as the Department of Justice, but also as a citizen of Portland, that ballot measure has a lot of teeth, 82% worth of teeth. And what I believe is driving that are current failures in the system that ought to be avoided. And so I would encourage you not only to look at the 2008 report, but the Department of Justice's compliance assessment, to the extent it touches on the accountability structure and the failures that we have seen, and the compliance officer community liaison reports, to the extent they touch on accountability failures that have arisen in the last couple of years. So I do think that's a wise practice to look at the current City of Portland structure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jared. Are there any other people who would like to make public comment? Then I would like to go to the garden plot. Victoria and co-chairs can
Okay.
comment along with staff.
You want the co-chairs to be first? Go ahead and I can.
Well, you can go, Victoria. Go right ahead.
Okay. I don't have a lot on the garden plot. The only thing I have is that a note to make the documents, a suggestion to make the documents more readable. And the others were questions and they were answered, and I took move it away from the garden plot.
Thank you so much. Staff.
I don't know exactly if this would normally fall into a garden plot, but I think it makes sense to say here, there was a request to talk about the scheduling, and I can definitively say there'll be at least 2 more meetings of the subcommittee at this point. We had only confirmed 1 on August 22nd, but we'll update over email once we figure out the dates and do the scheduling process, but August 22nd will not be the last one. And I would say the garden plot determination is figuring out when. So we'll get that out to members of the subcommittee as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you. Co-chairs. Any other garden plots that we want to consider? It's co-chairs for the garden plot. So there being no others from the co-chairs for the garden plot, I would like us to come to a close and adjourn this meeting.
Can I just ask one question before we close?
Yes, it's a question. It's not a garden plot, correct?
That's true. It's a question. And the question is, can somebody, I just want to make sure that I'm working off the most recent spreadsheet to input my additions and the most recent Word document. And I just don't, because I've lost track of the plot here. Is there somebody that can point me to what those links are, just to make sure I'm not working off of an out of date document or not inputting information into the wrong place?
Sure. Staff, could you put that into the chat, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And thank you for that question, Commissioner. Okay, so thank you to all of the members who attended to this evening's meeting, and thank you for your contributions today. Thank you also to the interpreters supporting access to the meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and its subcommittees for all Portlanders. Thank you to the members of the community for attending and contributing your thoughts and questions. You can give advanced public comment prior to future meetings at tinyurl.com/PortlandPAC comment. You can sign up for email updates on the PAC's work at tinyurl.com/PortlandPAC updates. It is now 8:57 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.